Right. So under system analysis, data and process modeling tools we used, especially structured analysis approach, we use this as a starting point where we can look at how data and what processes are involved. So the main, technique we are going to discuss under this is called data flow diagram, which I hope you have already done in your one of your previous courses, right? And then once after that, we will also have other methodologies, like for example, if we use object-oriented methodology, so then we can use object-oriented modeling, which I will cover after this session. Now, when it comes to data and process modeling, there are different levels we can talk about. Right? So this is a logical model, which means like you will see as a whole system. And we will not going to talk about any implementation details, right? Any implementation details. So remember that. So this data and process modeling, we will look at like how logical uh, uh, view or logical model that we are going to look at it. Now, physical modeling, we will discuss later on. We can go into details how exactly system will be constructed. Right? So the tools that we are going to discuss under today's topic under data and process modeling, we'll first start with looking at data flow diagrams, then data dictionary, and then process descriptions. Right. Now, let's start with the data flow diagrams. Now, in data flow diagram, we are going to illustrate graphically using the data flows within the system. So mainly we will focus on what data items are used in the information system. So this will give you a logical model, what exactly happened, what is happening within the system, not how it actually, do it. So we'll focus on a high level workflow. Now there are many data flow diagram symbols are used, right? So the one type which I'm going to use is, I will use the first set. We have, rectangular shape with rounded corners. We use for the processors. And then we will use arrows for data flow. And data stores looks like this, and then external entities. Whereas some other techniques are also available, which they use different symbols. So in my case, I'm going to focus on the first set of symbols. Now, having said that, the symbols, let's first discuss on some guidelining when you're drawing some data flow diagrams. Now, the first one, usually when we draw our first diagram, we call it as a context diagram. So context diagram, which shows the whole system and all the external entities which interact with the system. Now, for example, let's say library information system. We will have, for example, library users, we have library staff. So those are external entities. And then there are some interactions. So for example, users will, lend books, return books, and then library staff, make fines and provide the information and so on. So usually this big picture in context diagram, we put into one single page. Now, once you do that, we will create a one single process. Now, as I told you earlier, process will be represented as like this. And in the middle of this, we put up our system name. The previous example I have taken is a library information system. You can say, okay, library information system. Okay. So this is the starting point. And then you put some value as well. So for example, in the present example, so the single process could be grading system. So we can have in the middle of the page, we can draw the symbol to represent the process, and we can name it as a grading system. Now, then in next stages, we can create the processes within this information system, right? So when you talk about the library information system, we can talk about, lending books, returning books, and so on. So likewise, you can talk about more processes. So these are called low-level data flow diagrams, right? Then when you're using these symbols, the names what we use within these symbols should be unique, right? So you should not use, repeated, names for this. And usually we put up a number as well. So context diagram, when you draw it, we name it as a process 0. So in this example, you see a grading system. And here what happened, instructors assign final grades based on the scores received in the exam. So we draw this symbol to represent grading system, and we put 0 to indicate that that is the context diagram. Similarly, the next level diagrams we normally call data flow diagram 0, or level 1 PDF, level 1 DFDs. We normally have numbers as 1, 2, 3. And let's say if you want to go into more details under process number 1, then we can go in as 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on. Right. Okay. So let's start with drawing context diagram. So as I iterated earlier, context diagram shows you the top level view of an information system, and it will show you the boundaries and also the scope. In the sense, what are the things interact with the context diagram. So when you're putting up a context diagram, you put a single process, which should be in the center of the page, and then you put the process number 0. Right? And then we will have entities around the perimeter. And then next, we can use data flows. I will explain those with an example. And when it comes to context diagram, we will not use what we call the data stores, right? So that means, remember we discussed we have 4 symbols. So context diagram, we will only have processors, data flows, and external entities. We will not indicate any data stores in the first diagram. But the level 1 DFTs, or diagram 0 DFT, or diagram 1 DFT, which is also called level 2 DFTs, could have, data stores. Right. Now let's set example, the grading system. So the first step, as I told you earlier, you put up a rectangle box and you write the name of the system, grading system, and you put up 0 to indicate that, okay, this is the starting point. The next one, you will put up all the external entities. That means all the entities which interact with the grading system. Remember, this problem is about assigning final grades based on the scores of the students. So what you should have is, you have to have a student and you have to have instructor. Other than that, their scores are recorded in another system. So this is called student record system, right? The next one is you draw arrows which indicate data flows. So here's some arrows which indicate data flows. Now, for example, now the student is submitting his work, we call submitted work. And then instructor provides some grading parameters. And from the system, you will get the class roster. And then you will get the grade report. And then you will also put up graded work. And student will submit the work. Right. So this arrow shows you how the interactions happen. So one idea is like, so this will indicate data items. So remember, these are data items. There's no verbs here. So for example, here you can see from the student record system, we get the class roster, right? The student list here. Then from the instructor, we'll get the grading parameters. So when we get the student submitted work, then from the grading system, the instructor can get the grade report, and the system can also return the graded book, and final grade should be recorded back in the system. So flows, data flows will indicate how the data flow from the main system to the external entities. Right. Now let's look at another example. So this second example, we are going to see how order system works. So order system that company uses to enter orders and apply payments against customers' balance. So like in previous case, you can see we have an order system, and there'll be a customer who places the order. So there's a warehouse from where we are going to get the list of items ordered from the customer. And for the payments, we will have sales rep who will get a commission, bank which receives the payment, and accounting which will record the information. Now, what happens when the customer places the order in the order system? Order will look at whether they have necessary warehouse information. If they have, they can go to the next stage. If they don't have, they can reject the order. Now, let's say you have that set of items customer ordered, then you can create an invoice and send it to the customer, and you can get back the payment. And now, once your payment has done, so the system can get the item, the order from the warehouse, completed the order, and the payment information is distributed among 3 places. First one, there'll be a commission for the sales rep, and there'll be a bank deposit, and then there'll be an entry for accounting purposes. So as you can see, so this context diagrams give you high-level overview of how your system works. Right. Now let's look at drawing the second level. We can normally say diagram 0 DFD or level 1 DFD. So both terms are used to represent the second stage of the context diagram. So to show you the details inside the process symbol, we can create the data diagram 0 or level 1 DFD. And this will show major internal processes. So earlier we look at only the whole system. This time we will select major processes. So when you say major processes, which you have to include other data flows as well as data stores. So diagram 0 or level 1 can repeat the entities, and then you can have data flows which appear in the context diagram. So sometimes we will see the diagram is known as level 0 DFT. Right. Now let's see how this data flow diagram refinements. So if you have a one single process, you see we have an input A and output is B. So when you have this, we can go in details of the process F. So let's say your process F can be put like F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, F7, and so on. So you can see, so the input to the first process, F1 will be A, and output from the last process will be B. So within that, you can have a lot more information. Similarly, when you get the, let's say, the process number 4 here. So let's say you want to go more in details. So here we have two inputs, X and Y. So when you say X and Y, and there could be a more information about this process. There are some 5 sub-processes within this, but the input and output are the same. So in this particular case, you will have input X and Y, and the output should be Z. And this is how exactly we will go and look into details. Now let's start with our grading system. So when you talk about the grading system, so we have student, we have instructor, and we have student. So let's go into details of the system. So you can see now the grading system, you look at 4 internal processes as 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is details of the grading system. First, you establish a grade, grade book. You assign final grade. Then grade student work. Finally, you produce grade report. So what happens initially, the first step, you will get the class roster from student record system. And the instructor will input the grading parameters. And then once you get these two, then this will store the class grade book here. Once the class grade books here. And then the next one is, so assigning final grade. So you will get the grading details from here. And then you can actually record final grade in the grade book as well as the student record system. Third one, right? We have to get the students to submit the work, and then student will receive the graded work, and the student grade is recorded under the grade book. Last one, when you get the class details, you generate the report. So you can see now, in this particular case, previous project, we have 4 different processes. Similarly, let's look at our order system. So this is the context diagram, and these are the entities. So when you say the order system, right, then you can go into details about this order system, right? So you will get orders, you can reject it if you want, or else you can send the invoice, and then you can get the payment. Similarly, order system can pick item from the data warehouse, and you can complete the order. And then finally, there will be a commission, the bank deposit, and cash receipt. Now let's see how we can put into more details. So order system, we can have into 4 processes. You can have established grade book. Sorry. In this particular case, order system, we have to have fill order. We have a generate invoice, apply payment. So in first stage, what happens, you will get the order from the customer, and then you look for the picking list, and depend on the outcome, you may reject the notice. But then you create invoice, right? You get the completed order, right? And then you will notice invoice the accounts available at the same time with the customers. Third one, you can apply payment. You can get the invoice details, and then you can have payment details. Then apply payment, you will have commissions, bank deposits, and then cash receipts. Right. Now we looked at two levels. The first level, we said context diagram. Second one, we said diagram 0. The next part, we can go further. So when you look for low levels, right? So we can make use of leveling and balancing techniques. So what do you mean by these two? Let's try to understand. When you say leveling, we can actually draw increasing detail diagram. So we can have increasingly detailed diagram, and until you will have functional primitives. So this is also known as exploding, which means partitioning or decomposing. Next one, we call balancing. So balancing means consistency among a set of DFTs, ensure that input and output data flows align properly. So input and output data flows of the parent maintained on the child data flow diagram. So these are the two techniques. So in this particular case, we will elaborate the second one. We will look at payment information. Sorry, we have 3. And then you have to first order. We have verification. So when you get product details and when you get an order, you have a chance of rejecting this. And when you reject, we can have reject notice, which updates the customer and also credit history. So once you verify document, then we have to prepare reject notice, which will get the information from the customers, and the credit states is also we can show it here. Right now, as you can see, you can have a lot more details. You go down and anywhere you want. Right. Okay. Now that we discuss about the details, so let's do a small exercise. I want, how many of you are here today? We have 7. Right. Each of you, let's draw a context diagram. What do you mean by context diagram? We have a main system, and then we have some entities. Okay. So let's start. I will give you 10 minutes. So let's do it. When we ask to draw a context diagram in a library system, so you start with the context diagram. So we already discussed the context diagram. You have to have a single process. And then under that, we have to say library system. So that's the first step. And then once we have the system, around the system, we can have external entities. Now, when you talk about the library system, we can have external, entities like library users, library staff, any suppliers, for example, those who supply books. So let's say we have three like that. So what you could do is once you have the library system, you can have the external entities around this library system. And then you can draw arrows to indicate their interactions, right? So when you say your interactions, you can use flow lines to indicate what data actually flow, right? Now, for example, when you say we can have student details, right? And then let's say library user is providing user details, we can say, okay, we can provide him library ID. Or when a student will request a book, we can say book information, right? We can provide back the book information, like available books, for example. Let's say the library user requests a particular book, and then you can have list of books similar to the name that he has requested, right? So likewise, the supplier, the system can, request, for example, some information, like let's say you can provide the list of books available, and then the system can give you, okay, list of books required. So similarly, we can go for context tag. Now, when you want to go into details, so depend on what things you have done. So for example, we discussed two things, user registration, and we discuss supply book, right? So that user registration will interact with the library user, with the library staff. Then when you say supply books, we have a supplier and library staff are involved. So likewise, you can go into details. So I think we will discuss this in the interactive session, right? So more details. Now, the next thing, let's move on to the next part of the session today. So the first part is data flow diagram. The second part is we can talk about data dictionary. Now, when you say data dictionary, we talk about a set of data flow diagrams we will use to represent the logical model of the system. So we have to document these information separately. Usually we use a data dictionary. So if you ask me like, what is a data dictionary? So you can see the data dictionary as the place where we keep all the information about the system, right? And system analysis can use this, data dictionary to collect all the documents, the facts about the system. So this might include the content of data flows, data stores, entities, and all the processes. So this should, describe all the data elements and all the meaningful combinations. Now, let's talk about the elements of, data dictionary. The first one is data element, which is called data item or a field. So this is the smallest piece of data which we will use in information system. So for example, if you take student grade or salary or account balance, so these could be some data elements. Then we will have data records. So when you say data record, we can actually combine these elements into what we call the records. So record will be some meaningful combination of related data elements, right? Then next, the third one of the process description tool is we can talk about the process description tools. So under the process description tools, we can talk about three uh, items. The first one we can have, the first tool we can have is structured English. The second one has a decision table. And the third one is decision trees. So let's see how we can actually use these three elements or three tools. Now, structured English like a pseudocode in programming. Simply, you will use some standard English statements to represent different decision structures. You can use selection, sequence, and iteration. So, for example, let's say we want to accept or reject a particular customer's order based on a customer credit status, whether the customer is having a good credit or bad credit, and also based on product availability. Now, when it comes to this, you know that you have to do this for every order. So it will be a loop, right? So you have to go through each and every order. So you can say the loop as for each order, which indicates that you are going to iterate the process for each of the order. Then within the order, we can have some selection. So we have to check two conditions. The first one, we have to see whether the customer is having a good credit status or bad. So in this statement, we say customer status code yes, which means, okay, so customer status code is yes. And the next one is product detail, whether product is available. So when you say product detail is okay, which means we assume that we have the product available. So if both cases are met, we can say, okay, let's accept the order. Otherwise, which means else, we are going to reject it. So as you can see, this is simply using an English statement to talk about some decision process. So this is the first process description tool. Now let's look at the second one. Now, second one, what we have is called decision table. So when you talk about decision table, it's a logical structure and it shows all possible combination of conditions and outcome. We sometimes say actions, right? And what analysis can do, you can use the decision table to describe the process, and then they have used all possible combinations. So that is what decision table performs. So let's see, let's look at an example. Now, let's look at our previous example. So if I go back to my previous example, the previous example is about accepting or rejecting customer order. And it based on two things. First of all, based on the credit status and based on the product availability. So you can see there are two conditions here. The first condition, we have to check their credit status. Second one, we have to check the product availability. So if we have better credit status, then we can take it as one condition. So let's say we'll use in the same way, okay, whether the customer status is yes. Product availability, we can check whether the product data is okay. So those are the two conditions. So the actions would be the accept or reject information. So what we do, we will first put up the conditions. So order will be accept only if the product is in stock and customer credit status okay. So we put condition first. So we will check credit status is okay. So since you have put in this form, we will have two outcomes, isn't it? We have yes or no. Similarly, second one, we have to check whether the product is in stock. Again, answer is yes or no. Right? So since we have two conditions, there are four possibilities. These are known as rules. So the first rule says that, okay, both conditions are met, yes and yes. Second rule says yes and no. Third rule says no and yes. Fourth rule says no and no and no. So it's like in a truth table where we will look at all possible combination of these conditions. Now, once you put up the conditions like this, then we can put up actions. So the two actions are either we can accept the order or we can reject the order. So to accept the order, we know that these two should be positive or yes. So when credit status okay and productive is stock only, you are going to accept the order. So the cross will indicate that you are accepting the order. And all the other cases will simply reject the order. The first one, product is not available. Rule number 3, the customer credit is bad. Rule number 4, both credit status as well as product in stock. Credit status is bad and product is not available. So you see how decision table could be used to represent the decision process. Right. Now that we have looked at 2, we can go for an example. So let's perform decision table for this example. Right. Let's start. So the 2 things that you have to do is, first of all, think about, okay, what are the conditions? Then look at 4 actions. Yes, can you type in the chat? Okay, what are the conditions and what are the actions? Right. Now, the first thing that we need to identify is the conditions. So what are the conditions here? Can you tell me what are the conditions? So the first one indicates we have preferred customers who order $1,000 or more are entitled to a 5% discount. And additional 5% discount if they use our charge card. Now, when we have this, so we can say one of the condition is we have to check whether it's a preferred customer or not. Right? So the first condition, we have to check whether customer is a preferred customer. Yes, we have to request. Second, how much they have ordered, right? Whether they have ordered $1,000 or more. Third one, whether they have used charge card. Used charge card. You see, so these are the conditions. So first thing, you need to identify these conditions. What are the actions? What are the actions? The outcome. So if they have preferred customer and if they have ordered 1,000 or more, then you will get 5% discount. So 5% discount is 1. And if they have used charge card, additional 5%. So your additional 5% is another one. If you look at the second statement, preferred customers who don't order 1,000 or more will receive $25 bonus coupon. So $25 bonus coupon. And then last one, $5 bonus. Right. So now you see what are the actions. We have conditions and we have actions. Right. Now we can put up a table. Right. So now we have to put up a table. So we have three things now we have to talk about. Right. So the three things are right. So we'll first start with right. We can put up the conditions. So the first condition is preferred customer. Order $1,000 or more. Used charge card. And the action items are we have 5% bonus, additional 5% bonus, and then $25 $25 bonus, and then right we can have $5 bonus. Right now that we have all these conditions, we can talk about set of rules. Right. So the rule one, so we can have set of rules. So we can have rule one, rule two, rule three, rule four, rule five, rule six, rule seven, rule eight. Why there are rule eight? Because whether depend on whether you are a preferred customer or not. So the first you can have yes, yes, yes. Then you can have no, 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 no. Similarly, whether you have 1,000 or more, you can say yes, yes. Then we can have no, no, yes, yes, no, no. Finally, whether they have used charge card or not, we can say yes, no, yes, we have no, yes, no, yes, and no. So you can see this will guarantee that you look at all possible combinations. Now, let's look at the statements again. Now, okay, I need everybody to answer this question. Like, if you look at this, the first one, it's yes, 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 which means the customer is a preferred customer. Customer order $1,000 or more, and customer use charge card. So, what are the actions we need to perform? Yes. What are the actions? What are the actions we need to perform? So let's read the first statement. Preferred customers who order $1,000 or more are entitled to 5% discount. An additional 5% if they use charge card, right? If they are preferred customers, right? And if they have ordered 1,000 or more, so these two, you will get 5%. So which means we have to give 5%. I will put across to indicate that in both cases, they will get 5% bonus. If they are preferred customers and order 1,000 or more, they get 5%. If they have used charge, then 5% additional bonus. Here you will get additional 5% bonus. The next one, if they are preferred customers, but they have not ordered, 1,000 or more, then you should get 25 bonus. For both rule number 3 and 4, they are preferred customers, but they do not order 1,000 or more. So you will get 25 bonus. Right? They are preferred customers, but they do not order for 1,000 or more. All the other customers, they say, all the other customers, yes, all the other customers, they'll get 5%. Sorry, $5. So this is how it should like, right? So you can see, so decision table, in this particular case, you will have, right? So we have all the conditions we put up like this. And then we have put up all the actions. In this particular case, we had 4 actions. And then we have 8 rules because we have 3 conditions. We have 8 rules because we have 3 conditions. So rule 1, rule 2, and rule 3. So right. So this is the answer when you use a decision table. Right. The next one. Let me know whether you have finished taking down this. Just let me know by raising your hands. Then we'll move to the next one. And the data process tools, we discussed 2 things so far. We discussed structured English, where we write down everything using some English statements. And then the second one, we will use decision tables. Now, the next one, we are going to look at decision trees. Now, decision tree is a graphical representation. And again, you will have actions and rules. So for example, this decision tree we built for this problem. And what you see here is the same thing that we have discussed there. We put it up a decision tree. So here are the conditions. Now remember, our first condition was whether person is a preferred customer or not. If person is a preferred customer, we have to ask more things. But if the person is not preferred customers, we directly know the outcome. And you need to get $5 bonus coupon. So you can see, compared to decision table, this is more compact. But if the person is a preferred customer, Then we have to ask the second question. The second question is we need to ask whether the person is actually owned. So now you can see in here, so we talk about preferred customer. If the person is a preferred customer, then we can ask whether a person has ordered 1,000 or more. If it is yes, then we have to check whether he has used charge. If it is no, directly we know that uh, if you are a preferred customer and if you do not order 1,000 or more, you are getting $25 bonus coupon. The third one, now let's say you are a preferred customer and you are ordered 1,000 or more, but the next question is whether the person actually use our charge card. If that is yes, then you will get 5% discount and an additional 5%. If the person has not used our charge card, then it will be 5% discount. Right. Now, we have a small exercise to work on. Uh, let's start with this one. So given this problem, first I want you to work on decision table. Then once you finish, we can talk about uh, decision tree. Okay, let's start it.